Can the sound people prefer completely change the value of specific makers? Wow, this is a very sparkling subject, and you would say no, but it is definitely different. Stay tuned, and today we go a little bit deeper into this subject. Hello back again. This is Edgar from Cremona, Italy, and I make great sounding instruments together with all my colleagues here in the workshop, and we do every day nothing else than working and improving what we make. And all the work of all the violin makers in the past influence our daily work dramatically in order that we are making them even better. I know it sounds like, ooh, what is he talking about? But this is actually what every violin maker somehow tries and aims, of course. And some come a little bit closer, and sometimes you go a little bit away, and then you come back, and it's a daily back and forth, and it's like walking on the top of a mountain, and you're trying to be on top of it, yeah? And you want to reach the highest point from all the other ones, yes? It's the biology of economics, you know? You want to win every day's violin making competition, which is going on here in Cremona. More than 200 violin makers have their shop here in Cremona, a small town, and everybody is hungry and wants his great satisfaction to sell his violin, because the ones who come to Cremona want to choose the best for them, yeah? So the taste of the single customer is definitely influencing the market. Today we talk a little bit more about Jacob Steiner. I didn't want to tell you on the title of this video, because if you read nowadays Jacobus Steiner, Absalbend, South Tyrol, I'm from Austria, you know, so somehow you would say Edgar is related to Jacob Steiner. But when I started violin making, nobody really wanted the Jacob Steiner. In Germany, some people still loving this rich overtone, nice, beautiful sound of Jacob Steiner. And still a lot of people were searching for Andrea Amati and all the Amati family violins. And nowadays, sometimes you see some Amati models, but it's already gone. And this is because of the violin sound. So if now in 2026 people come in and they ask for a Guarnieri, something which like 20 years ago you couldn't imagine. And nowadays it's on our daily life that people walk in and they just want to test some Guarnieris violins. And on a cello, they want a Ruggeri, a Montagnana. And yes, of course, they love the Stradivari. They love the Stradivari sound. Stradivari is still the top of the top and is the most famous maker. But something is changing. So Jacob Steiner, he was born in 1619 in Absalbend in South Tyrol, Austria. And in that area, they talked already German and Italian. Just imagine that even my grandfather was working for the Austrian railway company, and he was then put it on the cemetery close to the Lago di Garda, the north of Lago di Garda. When I talk about Absalbend, Jacob Steiner, Austria, Italy, and whatever, you would say, damn, this man is a foreigner working in Cremona and whatever. Things in Europe are a little bit more connected, yeah? And you have to understand history, tradition, and all these things, and imagine that the borders, which now for a long time then at a certain point were just with a very clear line, but it has never been always like this. And you can build high walls, but these borders are just temporary lines. Life goes on and things will change. And same thing with the violin making. Already in 1644, Jacob Steiner went to Cremona. And he studied violin making together with the Amati family and learned how to make his instruments. Indeed, his instruments have a very similar shape like Amati, have as well these high arching, these for us now funny, I call them Walt Disney style F-holes, and these small scrolls, and then later on he also, instead of the scroll, made sometimes a lion head and things like this. But his impact, his rough characteristics of violin making, he learned in Cremona. He did that for, I'd say it now, 1 year. I have no idea exactly how much it was. But then he moved back to Uppsala, opened his workshop and started working pretty a lot. And right away had a lot of success. Very likely this success was because he was a great craftsman. He did a great job what he did. He learned from great makers like Amati. So he got a lot of orders and he had then over his career good success. Then was a few years before he passed away. Then he even put it into jail because he had some books which he didn't have, shouldn't have, and all these things. But this is a different story. You can read in Wikipedia. We're focusing now on the making. And this outline and this typical Jacob Steiner shaped arching, which is very high, and they're nice to look at and nice to hold, these instruments. When I was starting violin making, they were like, yeah, maybe 20,000 German marks, 10,000 euro, something like this, maybe 20,000, 30,000. Slowly they went up, and now if you look, Tarisio sold one for 300 and something thousand, 330,000, and generally speaking, somebody is offering them between 200,000 to 300,000. And of course they will go up in price slowly like all the instruments. But the key point is that at the time of Stradivari, these Jacob Steiner were very high quoted, much more than a Stradivari. Could you imagine? This is the point. And Stradivari adapted his making already to the sound taste of approximately 50, 100 years later. Even Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart, who was born in Austria, 1756, played on a Jacob Steiner, already an instrument which had been already 100 years old at that point, right? And that was the sound which people loved. And it was a small sound, beautiful, but it was not what nowadays is highly appreciated of Italian great sounding violins, a strong, focused, good projecting and loud sound. At the time they had these small, beautiful, cozy and charming playing instruments like Amati and Jacob Steiner. These instruments have been adapted to different sound evolution, of course. They changed the neck, they changed the bass bar, they changed the bridge, then the fingerboard and everything, the strings and everything in the bow and whatever, to become a modern contemporary violin which could compete. And there are some great sounding Jacob Steiner as well. And if you look at them, they're really nice to look at. They're not famous to be as great sounding like a Stradivari nowadays. So somehow, if you look back at the time of Mozart, what pops up in my mind, it would be interesting that maybe in 200 years my instruments will be more expensive than Antonio Stradivari, right? If you say it now, it would like be, what is Edgar is doing now? What's this video going on here? But it's a little bit in this direction, because nowadays you have difficulties to imagine that this high price and this desire to own an original Stradivari is one day will calm down and there comes a new top desired maker into the game, which of course at that time will be already passed away for many years already. Yeah? But it is more than obvious that in 200-300 years things will have been changed completely. Like we don't make too much difference now between Jacob Steiner and Stradivari, and we all mess them together into more or less the same period, or even Amati, which was 100 years earlier. But after all, it could be, right? It's just because it's a question of how things have been made. And in this case, the arching, the height of the arching, the kind of make is influencing the value and the desire that people want it. I don't know in which direction the sound will develop. For sure, it won't remain how it is nowadays. Of everybody, all the time, they always believe this is now the maximum and nothing will change. But look at new generations and what kinds of things they want nowadays, and you can't imagine that they desire that, but they don't have the same life than older people, and olders desire different things. And so everything is always in constant change and everything is changing, and that gives a new direction to how the value of these instruments is going to develop. More or less, I named it all roughly. But if you want to go deeper into it, or you even have the desire to make your own arching one day with a piece of wood on your kitchen table, then I certainly invite you to get some wood. Check in my webpage. We even sell wood kits for making an instrument, a nice gift if you want to give it to somebody and you're, whoop, this becomes one day a violin. And if you want to go see how it is made, then I have made the Edgar Online Violin Making Academy, where you can subscribe just for these specific courses. Thanks for watching, and thanks for subscribing to this great channel. Bye bye.